What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new F1 22 gameplay video. Big shout out to EA and Codemasters for giving me this opportunity to release some early gameplay footage. Today we're going to be going for a 50% race around Silverstone. This will be at 110% AI. We'll be starting from the back of the grid as Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and we will try to complete this last to first challenge. Of course, it's going to be difficult. It's 110% AI, and I haven't had the game for that long, but I've gotten a lot more comfortable with the handling model since I last released the last video in Miami. All assists will be off, and we'll be using the immersive game modes for the pit stop and manual grid formation. If you get your grid formation incorrect, it'll teleport you a few meters back inside your grid box, meaning that you're not in the optimal position compared to the AI or whoever you're racing against. And if you get your pit stop turn in wrong, you'll have a slower pit stop by a few tenths of a second. We've also switched the commentator from Crofty to Alex Jakes, just because we can. One thing I do want to mention about this track is there are some curbs you are no longer able to abuse, and someone with a very keen eye from my YouTube comments spotted out that when you start driving on a straight and building up speed, you can see the car sink down as the downforce pushes the car into the ground. And as you reach the end of the straight, begin braking, you'll lose speed, lose downforce, the ride height will then raise, and you're able to see that if you pay close attention, and we'll go into that in more detail later. So starting grid, of course, we're going to have the Red Bulls, the Ferraris, with ourselves as an exception, starting from the back. But the Red Bulls and Ferraris seem to be the fastest cars on the performance index, followed by Mercedes, and the rest of the order is a bit condensed, and it's hard to tell which cars have the best performance in the midfield because they are very close together. But if I had to make a guess, I'd say Alpine is probably the fourth best car. For the AI in Britain, they were typically easier than most other tracks up until a few years ago, where it got patched and they made the AI quicker. So we'll be the first people to try and test out to see if the AI has been made more competitive or if they've gotten any easier compared to the previous games. So jumping into the setup, the main difference between this year's game and last year's game is you are now able to change the front wing and rear wing setting between 1 and 50, whereas last year it was between 1 and 11. So we're starting on the medium tires for the British Grand Prix. This is the formation lap. Once again, we're going to be using the manual or immersive setting for the formation lap, which basically means we have to drive into the grid slot ourselves. If we overshoot, we get teleported back. And as we begin the formation lap, here's a few words from Mark.
Clutch right is good. Gearbox is responding normally. Make sure to warm up the tyres and brakes. Warm the tyres and brakes throughout the lap, please.
Now, while we were driving and sitting on the grid there on the pit straight, I don't know if you could hear it, but there was a loud helicopter. And I'm not sure if it's that accurate to real life, but it's pretty damn loud. And I'm sure you can adjust the settings for the volume of environmental effects. But here we are pulling into the grid slot, and we got purple, which means we stopped in the right position. You can also angle your car offensively or defensively when you're pointing it on the track. And it's 5 lights and away we go for the British Grand Prix. And we've gotten off to a pretty average start. It's always very hard to get on traction in this game so far. The AI pretty good on traction. It's 4 wide through turn 1. Albon makes contact with Vettel, and he's going to actually make contact with ourselves as well. AI being very fast, so we're going to dive bomb into turn 3 up the inside of Stroll. This turns to the outside for the next corner, and we're going to hang it all the way around the outside, even having a look at Magnussen. The performance of the Ferrari seems pretty good. It feels very balanced, the setup we've got currently on the car. We're starting on the mediums alongside everyone else seems to be on the medium strategy, and going on to the hards for the second half of the race. Now all over the back of Magnussen, he's left the door a little bit open and he's gotten a bit spooked, and that's promoted us up into P15. And also, if you haven't checked out the previous video, be sure to go do that. I talk about a bunch of the features in the new game, and Magnussen is actually going to fight back, sends it up the inside, but we have a more flowing run. Track extend a little bit. Luckily we didn't get pinned by the stewards for that one. Usually you get a warning, but I was also trying to leave the space for Magnussen. Next up is Ricardo, who seems to be in a train with Schumacher and a few other cars. So we're going to try and make hay while the sun shines, catch up to them using a bit of ERS and the overtake button. And we have a pretty standard downforce setup, so I wouldn't say we have much of an advantage on the straights, but Ricardo all out of shape, and that's left him vulnerable. So we're going to go up the inside of not only Ricardo, but Zhou in the Alfa Romeo as well. Hold it around the outside. Nice move. Up into P13. let's move on and try to catch up to Schumacher as soon as possible, because you can make up the most positions early on in the race, and then they start to space out a bit more as the race progresses. It's only lap 2, so DRS is still not enabled, so we're making full use of our battery to make the move there on Schumacher down the hanger straight. Tsunoda is up next, and once again you can see the AI making full use of the track limits, meaning they can carry as much speed through there as possible. So yeah, you can definitely hear the helicopter as soon as you come into the pit straight. It must be hovering somewhere above here as soon as you drive past it. I'm not sure if the drivers have to deal with this as well, but I can definitely hear it every time I drive past the pit lane. Tsunoda on the back of Norris, and we're going to try and get the both of them, if possible, on this straight. Open up the DRS, now available on lap 3, and we do have enough overspeed to get Norris as well up the inside, and that's us up into P10. But what I'm a bit worried about right now is our battery is running pretty low, so that makes us vulnerable to any form of counter-attack, especially if we're not in the DRS train of the car ahead. And Bottas trying to make a move on Gasly, which opens up an opportunity for us to go up the inside. Now Gasly's next up. We're in the P9. We're making good progress. It's only lap 4, and we've cleared the second half of the field up into the top 10. Ocon is a bit distant, but hopefully we can catch up to him and kind of slingshot our way off of Gasly onto the back of Ocon if possible. We've got 26 laps for this race. It's a 50% race, so we're expecting to only do the one stop. I'm not sure what the strategy is going to be like here for a 100% race.
Okay, be aware there's an incident in the next part of the track. No overtaking through the yellow flags.
It looks like Sainz has had an incident here, and he's bounced off one of the Red Bulls, and that's put him in a half spin. So that's him having pretty much the same luck that he does in real life. Catching up to the back of Ocon now. There was no safety car, nothing from that really, just the yellow flag. But only a short while later.
For a new strategy option. Right, drop your speed. Our delta's too low, and we're going to risk a penalty. Slow your pace immediately.
So the delta seems a whole lot slower as soon as the safety car comes out. You have to drop a lot of speed, at least for this track that I've found so far. We're going to continue with the one-stop strategy, but it looks like if the AI copy the suggestion from our engineer, they'll be trying to do a 2-stop and have a middle stint on the soft tires. Now if they do that, they're going to be very quick for a few laps on those soft tires, and we're going to be on the hard tires. I haven't even driven the hard tires yet, so hopefully we can get those into the working range. But the thing is, if they have to make another stop, that's going to put them roughly 25 seconds behind us. And here's our turn in. We nailed it. We got a 2.3 to 2.7 second stop, and it lands on 2.6. So that's one of the optimal pit stops. If you do not press the button or turn your steering wheel in time, you will have a slower pit stop. We'll see, as we exit the pits, we're on very cold tires, and being the harder compound, it's extremely difficult to get these up to temperature, especially when you're limited to how fast you can go under safety car and formation lap speed. So we're going to have to do our best to weave, brake, and generate understeer is what I like to do, which scrubs the front tires and generates a lot of heat. It looks like we have our first retirement of the Grand Prix. It's Sebastian Vettel with a mechanical failure as Max Verstappen picks up a whole lot of smoke in his face. And there goes Sebastian Vettel having pretty much the same luck again as Sainz, replicating the real life season. As you see, we're weaving, braking hard, and accelerating, trying to get as much heat into these tires, as it's going to be very difficult to keep up with these guys on the soft tires. And this is just a lap later. We are now ready to start the race again as the safety car is coming in this lap. Behind Russell in P15, but there is a whole bunch of AI that have not pit near the front of the pack that I believe are still yet to pit, that are probably on the same strategy as us. So they will either end up going onto the mediums or the hards to the end. But there's a bunch of cars immediately in front of us, such as Russell and Perez, and the two Williams behind that are on the softs that are going to be incredibly quick right now. But the thing is, they're going to be a pit stop down after a few laps when they do decide to pit. And the people that are currently at the front of the pack that will be pitting onto the hards or the mediums, they will be effectively a pit stop in front of them, and that includes ourselves as well. We close up a lot onto the back of Russell and Perez. They just got a massive exit out of that corner with the extra grip they have. I think Alonso is bottling them up, and it does seem that Alonso has some front wing damage, so we're going to hang it around the outside as he has pretty much no downforce to fight us with, and that promotes us up into P14. It just seems like the drivers who have some bad luck in the real life season are having that replicated in this Grand Prix as well. That's one of the Aston Martins stroll into the pits, as well as Ricardo going from the mediums to the hards. It looks like, just as I said, they will have only the singular pit stop to the end, whereas everyone else that remains in front of us on the softs, they will have to make another pit stop. And once again, I do not think the AI have the best strategy here, so we might end up being the beneficiary from this safety car, and this might promote us into the lead of the race once the Red Bulls and the Mercedes make their final pit stop onto either the mediums or the hards to come chase us towards the end. So the main point here is, can our tires last to the end with this increased tire wear that we have this year? I just have to look after my tires, and we should be able to bring this home in P1. Another thing I want to mention, on that outside curve, if you put your left tires on that outside curve of turn 3, you'll go straight on and lock up. There's no grip out there. So that's one example of this track that will punish you if you do abuse the curbs this year in comparison to last year. So now Perez and Russell into the pits, that's promoted us up into P1. We've just got to focus on this gap between us and Verstappen, and if we can hold it towards the end of the race, we've got a massive gap behind us.
Careful, we think you're going to start losing some tyre grip anytime now.
But as you heard from Jeff 2.0, our tires are going off. We just need to nurse them to get to the end of the race. You can see it's lap 23 now. The gap is 18 seconds, so we still have a massive margin. And right now, I really don't see us losing this race unless we make a mistake or we get a puncture. I don't exactly know when the puncture range begins in this new game. It could be very similar to the previous, but you have new compounds of tires from Pirelli with new profiles. So who knows if that will make a difference if they've coded that differently in the game. Just about only 3 more laps to go, and if we hang on, we bring home the win for the last of first challenge against 110% AI. Now the real question is, how would have this race gone if we weren't so lucky with the safety car and the AI choosing a strategy that wasn't optimal? Would have been curious to see how far we could have got up the grid, but looks like this is our final lap of the race, so I'm just going to walk you through it. Here's one of the DRS zones available at Silverstone, and it's a good opportunity to overtake going into this braking zone for the left-hander just after the 50-meter board. We're going to be downshifting down to 4th and then to 2nd gear. Now focusing on the exit of this corner, we're going to be shifting the car as left as possible onto the curbs to maximize our exit speed. Now we've got cops coming up, our fast right-hander, where we're going to keep it in 7th gear to keep the engine revs up. Infamously, Verstappen and Hamilton crashing there last year. Now we've just got Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel next up. Important to hit the apex of every corner in the S section, or else it'll ruin not only your flow through the remaining corners, but your run onto the hanger straight, which is probably your best overtaking opportunity, which can make you a sitting duck if you get previous corners wrong. Heading into the fast right-hander, we're going to take a more shallow line in comparison to previous games, as I found that was the quickest way around there. Down to 3rd for the remaining corners. This is a very low grip part of the circuit, but up to the sausage curb on the outside, we're able to plant the traction, and we come home in P1 for the British Grand Prix. Last of first completed, 110% AI, and very lucky from that safety car, I'd say. Driver of the day, and finishing more than 16 seconds ahead of P2, which happens to be Verstappen.
Fantastic performance from Ferrari. It hardly looked in doubt.
I think the key here was just the quality of the racecraft, you know. I mean, how many overtakes did they make overall? I'm sure we have a stat person keeping score somewhere, and it was fantastic to watch, wasn't it? This is a strategic sport at the end of the day, but it's always really gratifying to see close...
A nice shot there of the Ferrari. If you haven't already, please go check out the other video I've made. I talk about things such as cross-platform play and some of the new customization paints available for the multiplayer and My Team career mode cars that you get to design yourself. And here we can see there's actually a new podium cutscene which is trying to replicate what it looks like in Silverstone itself, and I think that's similar to most tracks where they try to replicate what the podium looks like specific to the locations, and that's pretty cool to see that you can see the crowd coming onto the grass to check out the drivers on the podium spraying the champagne. And as usual, if you have any questions about F1 22 that you'd like me to answer, be sure to drop a comment below so that I can answer those. But boy, am I excited for you guys to get your hands on this game, especially when cross-platform play comes out. I'll be hosting Dirty Driver lobbies across both, you know, PC, Xbox, PS4, PS5. It'll be awesome. It'll be massive grids, you know, everyone can join in, and that's something I really look forward to in the future when you guys get the opportunity to play this game. There's also a few new multiplayer things that I'll talk about in other upcoming videos, so be sure to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you all in a brand new one. Thanks for watching.